He's neither Sahaba nor Tabi'un. Why should I sit in a session talk about Malcolm X? After all, the Messenger of Allah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, خير أمتي قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. The best of my ummah is my generation, and then the generation that follows it, and then the generation that follows it. Then why you want to talk about Malcolm X? This afternoon, I would like to do two things. Number one, talk about Malcolm. And number two, to address a question that was given to me in a session yesterday that we didn't have a chance to answer. A parent wrote this question. Imam Siraj, what do we do when we find that our 15-year-old Muslim smokes weed? I want you to know what this session is about. In a real sense, it's not about Umar ibn Khattab, Uthman or Ali or Aisha or Khadija or Khalid ibn Walid or Hassan al-Basri. Really, what we talk about here in this session right now is you. Because every one of you, the youth, have something going on with you right now. All of us, we suffer trying to be a Muslim in America, having our shortcomings. And then, therefore, what can we take from Sahaba? What can we take from Tabi'in? What can we take from Malcolm X? So that when we go away back home from this conference, we go back home a little bit better than we were when we came. Malcolm X. I have a lot in common with Malcolm. No, I wasn't born in 1925 like Malcolm. But I have a lot in common. He was Malcolm X. I was Jeffrey 12X. He spent 12 years in the Nation of Islam as a minister. I spent 12 years in the Nation of Islam. Malcolm X had 6 wonderful daughters. I had 7 wonderful daughters. One of them in the back, Siraj Wahhaj. Very wonderful though. I love that girl. Seriously, she's so smart, and she has her own radio program. I listen to it, get inspired from it. So Malcolm was a minister in the Nation of Islam. Imam Siraj was a minister of the Nation of Islam. One of the funniest things happened to me a few years ago. I was in the city of Glasgow, Scotland. Brothers picked me up from the airport, and as we were driving to our destination, I noticed that there were a lot of huge posters of Imam Siraj Wahhaj. And I told the brother, stop the car. I wanted to read what was on the poster. And after I read what was on the poster, I started to laugh. He said, Imam Siraj, why are you laughing? Because when I read the poster, it said Imam Siraj Wahhaj, the best friend of Malcolm X. What? But Malcolm died in 1964. I was 14 years old. So I never got the chance to meet Malcolm. No, I wasn't his best friend. But I loved Malcolm. Allah blessed me to meet his wife, Dr. Betty Shabazz, and we became friends for years. met the children of Malcolm. So why should we talk about Malcolm X in this conference of Muslim youths? Why? What did Malcolm accomplish that we should sit in a session to get from him so that we can be inspired? A few things about Malcolm that maybe you didn't know. Not only was he born in Omaha, Nebraska, you know about that, in 1925. But maybe you didn't know that when Malcolm was 6 years old, his father was murdered by the KKK. Maybe you didn't know that when Malcolm was 13 years old, his mother, Louise Little, was committed to an insane asylum. Most of you know the criminal life of Malcolm. You know that Malcolm spent 8 years in prison. And everything that you can imagine, Malcolm did. Those of you who are wondering about smoking reefer, should I try a little reefer, smoke a little reefer, a little weed, a little marijuana? I can drink a little wine or a little beer, a little alcohol. I can go to the prom, I can go to the party. I want to go to the club. If you're thinking about that right now, I want you to listen to me carefully, because even though Malcolm X was assassinated in 1964, he still reaches out of the grave and can still influence Muslim youths today. Malcolm X. Malcolm lived a world of crime, and everything you can think of, selling drugs and alcohol and being a pimp and all those kind of things Malcolm did, and he's not afraid to admit it. To me, the best book to read about Malcolm, and if I were you, when I leave the conference today, I would go out and buy this book called The Autobiography of Malcolm X. I know there's a lot of controversy now about a new book written by a man named Manning Moraby, 600 pages, and I got it, I read it, I read a lot of it, bringing about more information about Malcolm X, but in my opinion, still the definitive book about Malcolm. If you want to know about Malcolm, you should read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And let's see what the Times Magazine said. In 1998, Time Magazine named the autobiography of Malcolm X as one of the 10 most influential non-fiction books of the 20th century. I am a teacher, and if I would give you an assignment, my assignment would be to go out and buy the autobiography of Malcolm X. How many of you have a copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X? Raise your hand. Good. How many of you who do not have a copy, make a commitment that somewhere when the conference is over, you're going to pick up a copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X? Raise your hand. Okay, good. Malcolm X. Malcolm got out of prison in 1952. Became a minister of the Nation of Islam. How many of you heard about the newspaper of the Nation of Islam called Muhammad Speaks? Raise your hand. Muhammad Speaks was a newspaper that was put together by Malcolm X. Malcolm X was a man who went around America and caused a great growth of the Nation of Islam. When he joined the ranks in 1952, maybe they had about 400 followers throughout the whole country. Malcolm went all around the country opening up temples in the Nation of Islam. Malcolm became very famous in the Nation of Islam. Now you brothers and sisters, if you want to study some of the history of the Nation of Islam in America, you ought to read about something in the Nation of Islam. Muhammad Ali